Although many, maybe most of us are guilty of eating mindlessly at times, our guest on this week's Health Talk says mindful eating can be beneficial and even help you control your weight. She'll explain why on this week's Health Talk. Stay tuned, we're up next. Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Mazer. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, eating, and this is about mindfulness-based eating with Barbara Schmidt. She is the nutrition lifestyle specialist at Norwalk Hospital. I can talk about this topic all day because it's such a lifelong problem. So now you're going to talk about what is mindful eating?
Mindful eating is basically being aware of what we're doing. Most of us are on what I call the seafood diet. We see food and we eat it. We're not thinking about what we're eating, when we're eating, or how we're eating. We're just eating it.
Aren't we really programmed for that? We lived in the jungles or wherever we lived in trees, and food was not abundant. And wasn't it adaptive to eat as much as you could when you had access to food?
Well, I think the jungle, if that's what you want to do, people actually listen. You need to listen to your body. I mean, and like a baby cries when it's hungry.
My babies cry all the time.
But the thing is that, people need to separate emotional hunger from real physical hunger. So emotional hunger is the cravings that you know about. Physical hunger is what's really going on physiologically in your body.
And talking a little bit maybe about food, it plays such an important part in our life and our society. You think of almost any celebration involves food.
Oh, right, it revolves around
holidays involve food. Halloween involves candy.
Right.
Easter involves candy.
Right, it revolves around food. There's a lot of emotional significance. There's special food. There's a lot of pressure from family and friends. So especially with the holidays. So during those times, I always tell my clients not to deprive themselves, because then if you feel deprived, then that's when you even want it more.
In my life, I remember going on 800 calorie a day diets, and you could do that for a week, and then all of a sudden the floodgates break.
If you were lucky to go for a week, usually
a few days.
The
floodgates break, and you're in the cabinet at midnight, throwing open the door and pulling out anything that's barely edible.
Exactly. You were starving. You're ready to eat the furniture.
Well, I have young grandchildren at home, and I'm watching their mother and father teaching them to eat. What should parents do? What is the correlation between saying clean your plate or it's time to eat? A lot of times young babies are pretty fascinated. I'm talking about after the bottle stage, but when they're starting to eat solid food and stuff, what's the role of that experience and habits later in life? Do we know?
Okay, I do think one of the things I just know from when I was growing up, and I see parents doing it, is children, you learn from the beginning when they're very young that eating, they get food as a reward. And so you don't want to do that. You don't want to say, hey, Eric, if you're a good boy, I'll give you a candy. Or I'll give you a cookie if you're a good boy. So then at the end of the day, when you come home, you're saying, well, I'm a good boy, where's my cookie? So you want to, that's also mindful eating, in that you want to learn to identify what your cues are. Are you eating for those?
Just to tell a story along those lines, when I was in college, I was an aeronautical engineer, and one of the things we had that was different from almost everyone else is we had these very long afternoon labs after a morning full of classes. So I'd have 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I don't remember, we'd go from 1 to 4:30. And I remember very distinctly, I would reward myself. I'd go across the street and get myself a hot fudge sundae after making it through one of those
really?
days. So that's exactly what, except it wasn't my parents rewarding me, it was me rewarding myself.
Well, you're rewarding yourself because you've had this learned behavior from before. But listening to that timing, one of the things that's important is that we eat every 3 to 4 hours, because every 3 to 4 hours, that's when we're actually going to be physically hungry.
I thought about that. That works morning, 8 o'clock, noon, maybe a...
And then you need a snack at 3 or 4, and then you'd have dinner at 6 or 7. So you need to plan. So it's all about planning.
Then you have that long stretch from 7 to 11, 7 to 12, before you go to sleep, especially right before you go to sleep, when people tend to overdo it.
Well, after dinner, the kitchen is closed. That's you don't.
Or as Richard Simmons used to say, you're done eating.
Yes, exactly. So you have to tell yourself that I don't need food. Think of your body like a car. You're putting gas in your tank. So you need to fill it up, especially in the morning, and you want to keep that gas coming in continuously. But then before you go to bed, at dinner time, after dinner, the kitchen is closed because you're putting the car in the garage. What good would that do? You're not going to burn those calories. So you want to eat on schedule and separate that emotional eating and those emotional triggers. So I try to show people too, like to do nothing else while eating. A lot of people are in the habit of watching TV and eating. Then you're not focusing on the food. You need to, when you're eating every 3 to 4 hours, you want to focus on the food. You don't want to be triggered by other things around you. And if you're watching TV, you're eating too quickly. So that's another aspect of when we're eating our meals, our tendency is to inhale our food and we're not really tasting our food.
So say a little bit more about mindfulness in the context of eating. Does it mean really looking at the food as you're eating it, being aware of each bite,
yes.
Chewing it, tasting it?
Looking at the portion sizes, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but portion sizes are key. How much we're eating, when we're eating. Remember, you've got to plan what you're doing every day, and especially the meals.
Are there any other tricks for mindfulness? Now I know that deep breathing is a good way to control anxiety and stress.
Right.
And there's good physiologic reason for that. When you're stressed, you tend to breathe more rapidly, and simply by lowering your level of breathing, often using your diaphragm rather than your chest, you can breathe in a non-stressed way, and that then feeds back to the brain and reduces your stress.
Right, and so you may find that maybe in the afternoon, or when you're high stressed, I'll have a lot of clients that will tell me, when I'm stressed eating. Well, I'm like, great. One of the things is you've got to identify, why are you overeating? So if you're eating when you're stressed, then maybe to do a deep breathing technique to reduce stress is important.
How about if you just enjoy it? Again, it's because
well, you should
most
enjoy.
people enjoy food.
Well, you should. I enjoy food. I love food, but and I love to cook, and that's important. But you want to make sure that you're eating when you're hungry. You're not eating because when you walk into the movie theater, that little box of popcorn is telling you, go buy some popcorn.
It is telling you buy
yes.
popcorn.
Or when you go to, why is it when you go to a baseball game, you feel like having Cracker Jacks and a hot dog? It's because we've been programmed that way. So you want to say, okay, am I really physically hungry? Is it my time to eat? Because my time to eat is every 3 to 4 hours. So, or is it that the environment is telling me, let's eat? Do you follow when I'm coming?
Sometimes the environment is so seductive. You walk into a bakery, and the smells, and I'm thinking of touring around in a strange city, and you walk into a bakery or one of these, they're some sort of Greek food, the sandwich, I'm blanking on the name.
The gyro or something.
The gyros, and they're carving it off the lamb, and it looks so spectacularly beautiful.
Well, so make sure that when you walk in there, you say to yourself, okay, is it my time to eat now? And if it is...
just walk away and do some deep breathing to calm myself down, reduce the excitement.
Buy the gyro, but just eat it when it's your time to eat. And then when you eat it slowly.
I was just saying, the tricks for eating while you're eating slowly, and being really mindful of the bite, the taste, the chew, the swallow.
Exactly. And remember, it takes 20 minutes for your brain to tell your stomach you've had enough.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, a problem, because it would be nice if you got full when you really were full. But I know for me, I still tend to eat till I feel full, but you're saying I've been eating for 20 minutes after I've been full.
And then if you've been sitting here shoveling the food in, then all of a sudden you feel, I feel like a stuffed turkey. So you really have to, I tell people to take your hand off the fork, take a bite, put the fork down, put your hand on your lap. take a sip of water, put your hand on your lap. These little steps to slow down your eating so that you can actually taste the food and say, why do I like this so much? And think about it, why do I like what I'm eating? What is it about this food that I really like and take?
One thing you may be aware, a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5, I lost 55 pounds, got very, very thin, maintained it for a couple of years, and then slipped. So, but I remember during the successful time, cutting very small portions, taking meat and making it last. But I also remember a certain sense of loss that I wasn't allowed to stuff myself anymore.
Well, you see,
how do you get over that
loss? And you stuff yourself. I don't like people to be deprived. So one of the things I try to teach people is not to be deprived. If you want to eat something, like we were talking about the holidays, eat the food that's special to that time that you can't get any other time. But also too, keep in mind the moderation.
Yeah, and I think that was really.
And you need to exercise, to compensate for those extra calories
that you're eating. I know that there have been a lot of studies that don't show exercise really helps with weight loss, but I think they're flawed in a certain way, because if you are eating nearly your requirements, and this is when, again, I was very successful, if my requirements were 2,200 calories a day, and I ate 2,000 calories a day, that's not a great deficit. But then you exercise 30 minutes a day, that's another 300 calories deficit you've created. Then suddenly you're into a safe and sustainable weight loss pattern, where you're losing a pound every 4 days or so.
Well, it's cumulative,
or 6 days.
Because a pound is, you need to have a caloric deficit of 3,500 calories. So if I have a caloric deficit of 500 calories a day, after 7 days, it's a pound.
But you have to sustain that.
You have to sustain it.
It has to be a real lifestyle change. And that's why, again, when I was successful, I still hope to go back there, but you can't say I'm on a diet, because if you say I'm on a diet, that implies that you're going to go back to your old eating, and if you do, you're just going to gain the weight back.
It's not a diet. There's not because a diet implies the beginning and then an end.
And also deprivation.
This does not, This is not, you have to learn how to eat, enjoy the foods that you're eating. In my weight loss program Transformations, that's what we talk about. That you're not on a diet. This is your life. It's
And I also noticed, once you get into it enough, you still enjoy the food. It's not like suddenly you're never going to have a piece of banana cream pie again in your life.
No.
You may not eat a pie at one sitting again in your life, but you certainly can have. There's no single food that's going to ruin your eating.
Yeah, because that piece of pie isn't 3,500 calories. So I always say 80% of the time you have to stay on track. So that 20% of the time when you eat something that maybe you're overindulging, you have to, those calories then compensate. And you have to exercise. I'd like to talk a little bit
about that when we come back, especially because I know some people will watch themselves 5 days a week and then on the weekend let themselves indulge. So let's get back to it. We don't have time now, but we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, Barbara will give us some more tips for how you can become and stay svelte or thin. Hi, welcome back to Health Talk. My guest today is Barbara Schmidt, the dietitian. We were just saying during the break, you've walked the walk. You've actually lost weight and have sustained it. Just say a couple words about that.
Well, I always tell, I've been in your, I've been where you've been. I've been in your head, and I want to get into your head again because I've lost, 35, 40 pounds. And that was about 29 years ago, and I've kept it off.
I've lost 25 to 50 pounds 4 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago.
Prior to that, I must have lost and gained thousands of pounds.
Which is very unhealthy, by the way.
No.
That is not good for you.
Yeah, the yo-yo dieting.
And it's rare that people are, and that's another problem. When you look statistically, the recidivism rate for people who are overweight is very, very high. Very few people do what you've managed to do. You've made it your life, though.
But it's my life. And I think part of it is the fact that I developed this program, because Transformations is my program that I developed. And I'm teaching it constantly. So I'm hearing myself talk.
And you've got to walk the walk.
And I have to walk the walk. Right.
So maybe take a couple seconds and plug your own program. You run this out of Norwalk Hospital?
Out of Norwalk Hospital.
Is this free, or do people pay?
No, you have to pay for it. It's an 8-week program. Mm-hmm. I usually have about 6 to 10 people in a class. It's $180. And I have daytime classes on Tuesdays and evening classes on Thursday.
And you said 8 weeks.
It's 8 weeks.
But so do people check in later? Do you have some way to people
Okay,
come
so
back?
what we do is it runs every 8 weeks, the program, and there's a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3. You set your goals in the beginning of the class, and you may say, and then every week we set short-term goals. So when I was talking...
Do people get weighed?
Every week I weigh you. I have you keep a food diary. I give everybody gets a binder the first week, and I give you handouts. You're learning to be a student of your habits. So you're learning about why you're eating, when you're eating.
Now, are people referred to you? This is not your... You should point out this is part of the hospital
It's
program.
part of... I'm doing it for the hospital. So doctors refer patients. You can self-referral. My clients are usually my best advertisement. They're my billboards.
So somebody's sitting at home and would like to be part of your transformation, especially after the holiday season.
Right.
They want to get
and I'll be starting it
beautiful.
up again, right, in January, and then,
How do they reach you, Amber?
So they would call the nutrition department at Norwalk Hospital, which is 203-855-3548.
Do they ask for you, or should they ask for transformations?
They say, I want to be, in Barbara Schmidt's Transformations weight
And if
loss
they live
program.
out of this area, there are some people here, as far call it other... Are
Right.
there other hospital-based or other programs you recommend? Weight Watchers, I know, is...
Weight Watchers is also a very good program. So I don't know any other hospital-based programs, but I do have people in my program from Greenwich, from New Canaan, from Westport, Fairfield.
Does Danbury run a similar program? I know they're part of our network.
Not that I know of.
So this is especially a little bit different,
right?
Because it's a very personalized program.
And it's my program. It's my program that I developed, that I do.
Now, we have a whole bunch of fake food, so I'm not sitting here
right.
smelling it. But say, what does this teach you? I know you've been on before,
right?
And I know you talk about portion control,
right?
And actually, before we get to, let's say something about calories, because I think some people believe it's when you eat or how you eat, but it's not the calories you eat. I don't believe that. I think every time I've always dieted, my weight loss corresponded pretty much to my calorie consumption and my...
Well, your body weight is about calories in versus calories out. The calories in are that you get from the food that you're eating.
People talk about fat-burning food.
Well, I was going to say, and then the calories out are the exercise. But not all calories in are created equal. So things that are simple sugars or simple carbohydrates, so, carbs have gotten a bad rap. Sugars, you suck them in, your body doesn't require any energy to digest them. But a high fiber food requires more calories to digest it.
So the other thing, do you talk about the glycemic index of foods? I know I found that helpful, actually.
Well, I talk about the fiber content. And glycemic index is directly related to the fiber.
And what we're talking about is that simple sugars, simple starches get into your body. They quickly spike your blood sugar. Insulin goes up,
You're
and
going to be
insulin
hungry
sort of drives fat accumulation.
Yes, right,
and,
exactly.
and also those swings, I think, help drive appetite as well.
And the more fat you have on your body, the slower your metabolism is going to be.
And the more insulin resistant you are, too, just to
exactly.
point out, that's where diabetes is coming from. So let's say I don't want to run out of time.
So
I
wanted to show this because you were talking about fat accumulation from insulin. And the more fat you have on your body, the slower your metabolism is going to be. This is, a glass of wine or just example of alcohol. This is 100 calories, but the problem with alcohol, not only does it have calories, it increases our triglyceride levels and makes us fatter. So it slows our metabolism down. So the more fat that means I have on my body, the slower my metabolism is, I need to exercise more to get rid of that. So
But
I tell
there are
people,
data out there that a glass or two of wine a day, or actually I just recently saw some data for beer, actually improves your cardiovascular health. That's sort of not teetotally, but just above that level. Very modest increases in alcohol.
it does a little bit, but it's still, but we're not teetotalers. You know, the problem here is that this is about moderation.
Right.
I'm talking about, that would be 4 ounces of, 4 ounces of wine, or an ounce and a half of
And this is,
alcohol.
when we're talking about beer, we're talking about 1 beer, maybe 2, not a 6-pack.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Because these are otherwise also very empty calories. They don't, they're simple calories like the other ones, like
Right.
sugar we were talking
Right,
about.
and that's why you need to exercise more to compensate for these extra calories, that extra fat that you're getting on your body.
So tell us some more about some of these foods.
So one of the big, I think, issues is in our diet is that we eat too many starches. You know, when I show someone that this is 1/3 of a cup of cooked pasta and it's 80 calories, and I haven't even put any sauce on it. Yeah. And when you go out to an Italian restaurant, you're probably getting at least 3, maybe 4 cups of pasta. That's 9 to 12 servings. And herein lies the problem. We're eating too much.
Yeah, my wife and I just had pasta last night, and I honestly would say that's probably 2 forkfuls.
Yeah, so we should
2
only
forks
eat,
full.
I tell people that if you want pasta, you should only be eating about 2/3 of a cup, just under a cup, okay? And then think about what you're putting on.
And again, I think the way you can rationalize that so you don't feel that you're depriving yourself, if you eat it slowly, if you pay attention to the taste,
Right.
You don't have to have a
Right. So if I have
enormously stuffed mouth.
Right. If I have a small portion, I'm eating on a smaller plate, and I'm taking my time to eat it, then I'm not going to be eating as much, is the bottom line.
With our culture, like when you go to Europe or you go to a European restaurant, very often the portions are very small.
Right, exactly.
But very tasty. And it seems like that's the right idea that we're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Our problem is being Americans.
We're supersizing everything.
Right. Everything we say, if some is good, more is better. And that's not the case. So anyway, our starches, we're eating way too many of these. I always like to show the bagel because,
that was a surprise to me because bagels are boiled, and I thought, well, gee, they're not fried, they're not
but
deep
it's a starch, and they're equivalent basically. I mean, looks small comparison to what you end up getting, and they're about, some of them are equivalent to 5 to 6 slices of bread.
Yeah,
and that's way too many carbs for you or I. Maybe a marathon runner.
I always think 350, 400 calories for a bagel. That seems like an enormous amount compared to a piece of bread, which may be 60 calories.
Well, you better read your bread too, because we're talking about a 1-ounce slice of bread, okay? Most of the bread that's out there, they don't even put ounces anymore. They'll say 48 grams. Well, that's 2 ounces. So 1 slice of bread of like a granola bread, you're really getting 2 servings. So if I'm having a sandwich on that, I'm getting 4 starches, and that's too much, Eric. You should only have 2 starches per meal at a time. And I know you always laugh at these portions on the meats because you're like my husband, you think this is an hors d'oeuvre, but the American Heart Association says that we should have no more than 6 ounces of animal protein.
Those 6,
these are 3 ounces, so that's a total. So I usually give men, I'll tell them that they can have more. They can have 8 ounces as long as it's not beef. Beef only twice a week. And if they're having chicken and fish primarily, then you can eat a little bit more. And you want to eat fat-free or non-fat dairy products.
How about soda?
Oh, no. Look at me.
No, God forbid, no.
No, it's empty calories.
Well, but I've also seen people criticize diet soda, which has almost no calories in it, but
I don't
why
like
is that bad?
I don't like diet soda either because it's 10 times sweeter than sugar is. I'd rather have you have a little bit of the real stuff than a lot of the fake stuff. So you really need to re-educate your taste buds. So when you do diet soda, lots of diet soda, then you're just constantly craving really sweet things.
And it's interesting. I know there were studies done showing that diet soda does not contribute to weight loss. People
No.
so that you'd think it would, and it's certainly in the sense from a calorie standpoint, it makes much more sense to me to drink a can of diet soda than an 80-calorie Coke. But
correct, but you're better off drinking water or just having milk, for the calcium.
So we have less than a minute left, so
Okay.
pick something that's really important.
Oh, okay, so when it comes to fat and nuts, okay, this is a teaspoon of fat, that's 50 calories. This is a tablespoon of oil. This is 150 calories. And this is 30 almonds, or 250 calories. So the problem is people think, 6 almonds is 50 calories. You have to be very careful. I tell people to take 12 almonds, put them in a Ziploc bag, and that's 100 calories, and that's your snack in the afternoon.
And again, then you savor every almond, every half.
Yeah, and exactly, eat it slowly. And they're good fats. You want to eat good fats.
And we have to break. I could talk about this stuff all day. So we're going to ask you to stay on set because when we come back, we will answer today's health question. But right now, let's take a look at some of the upcoming events sponsored by the Western Connecticut Health Network. Hi, this week's health question is, do you recommend a vegetarian or a vegan diet? Well, we talk about limiting meat and fish. We've got an expert on the set. What about vegetarian and vegan diets? Are they good for you?
Well, I think you need to be knowledgeable on how to complement your proteins. Because when it comes to being a vegan, there's different types of vegetarians. Right. There's an ovo-vegetarian, there's a lacto-vegetarian, and there's ovo-lacto. Ovo means eggs, lacto means milk, dairy. But strict vegans need to make sure that they are getting soy-based products, soy foods, because those are complete proteins. Soy are the only vegetable, or I should say plant food, that's a complete protein. So you need to be...
That would mean there are certain amino acids
exactly.
that build proteins that you don't get from a pure vegan diet.
Exactly. So you want to make sure that you're complementing your protein. So if you are a strict vegan, you want to make sure that you're having beans and rice, or you're having beans and pasta vazzoule, so that you're complementing your protein. You're doing your peanut butter on your...
We've got just a few seconds left. Multivitamin along with it, do you recommend that for someone on a vegan diet?
I always recommend a multivitamin to cover all your bases.
Because I know B12 is a meat-based vitamin that
and if you're a vegan, you run the risk of developing a B12 deficiency.
Okay, so if you want to be a vegan, the thing is to be a knowledgeable vegan.
And see a registered dietitian.
So that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. If you at home have a question you would like to ask on Health Talk, please contact us at healthtalk@norwalkhealth.org. I want to thank our guest today, Barbara Schmidt, for coming on our show, giving great advice about dieting, and actually, I shouldn't say dieting, about healthy living, healthy eating, and I will see you next week on Health Talk.